As a wizard, I must tell you that words have power. As a politician, I must tell you that I already know. Like with most Terry Pratchett quotes, this one has a ring of truth that hits very hard, and it is central to what I want to talk about today, because this video explores an odd intersection of politics, magic, and historical lore. What if you had a constitutional magocracy? No, not a kingdom, a government run by mages and yet bound by a constitution. Welcome to another world-building video by Just in Time Worlds with your host, Marie Mullaney. Let's dive straight in with what a magocracy actually is. I have done a video on this, which you can check out in the information card, but basically a magocracy is any government that is not just run by mages, but the government functions because they are mages. This is not a king who happens to be a wizard. This is a government that is driven by magic. What are you doing, my cupcake? You wanna be there? Welcome to my cat who wants to say hello. I hope you all appreciate his visit. This is... One moment. Cats, what are you gonna do? Where were we? This is not a king who happens to be a wizard. This is a government that is driven by magic. And it can either be mages over common people, as is the example in the Bartimaeus sequence, or it can be everyone is a mage, but the most powerful rule, as is the case in Jim Butcher's Furies of Calderon. The other concept that you need to understand in order to grasp a constitutional magocracy is, of course, the definition of constitution. A constitution is both a simple concept and a complex one. At its core, a constitution defines how an organization or a country or even an alliance is constituted. It is a foundational document or set of principles that outlines the framework of governance. It serves as the highest law of this organization, and it delineates the powers and duties of the various constituent components of governance for this organization. You can have a written constitution like the famously written United States Constitution, or you can have an unwritten constitution that is codified in various statutes and laws and so on, as is the case in the United Kingdom. In essence, in this case, a constitution is a blueprint for how a society chooses to organize itself politically and legally, aiming to ensure a balance between the power of the state and the rights of the citizens. Okay, so what does that mean for a constitutional magocracy? A constitutional magocracy can be defined as a form of governance where the authority to rule and make laws is vested in individuals who possess magical abilities, and this power structure is regulated by a constitution. This constitution sets out the fundamental principles and established precedents according to which the state is governed, balancing the immense personal power of mages with the collective rules of political governance. There are three major elements to consider here, and we will explore those in the rest of this video, along with how such a strange form of governance might come about, and how you can embed your magic deeply into the society created by this constitution. And of course, we'll talk about the themes that this opens up to the storyteller. So, with the definitions out of the way, let's talk about the first element of constitutional magocracy: magic as the basis of authority. What does magic as the basis of authority mean from a practical standpoint? Essentially, the right to participate in the political process, including lawmaking, enforcing, and interpreting the law, is based on a person's magical capabilities. If you have reasonably powerful and reasonably pervasive magic in your world, this government actually makes sense. If there are people who can throw fireballs, they can only be stopped by other people who can shield against fire. The same forces that give rise to governments based on warriors would give rise to governments based on mages, especially if you have some form of societal collapse leading to chaos in the land. For example, when the Western Roman Empire collapsed, it left Europe in an anarchic condition that gave rise to feudalism. In our fantasy continent that's just been through a similar collapse, a few strong fireball throwers might start establishing order, and pretty soon you have feudalism based on magic instead of warriors. And the common people accept this for the same reason as they accepted warrior-based feudalism. They can't throw fireballs. And the fireball throwers insist that they are only acting for the common good. And pretty soon you have a pyramid scheme government. And yes, I absolutely did just compare feudalism to a pyramid scheme. Fight me in the comments if you disagree. Anyway, that's generally your standard magocracy. Wizards rules, everyone else rules. But today we want to have a discussion about a different sort of magocracy, one where magical power is kept in check by a constitution. So, let's talk about this constitutional framework and how it might come about. In our fantasy government, everyone doesn't just rule. Their rights to eat are guaranteed by a constitution, which outlines the structure of the government, the rights of the citizens, magical and non-magical, and the limitations on the use of magic within the realm. It serves to prevent the abuse of magical power and ensure that governance remains fair and just. But why on earth would our mighty mages accept such limitations on their power? In my opinion, there's 3 ways in which such a constitutional framework could come to be. 1. The mages could be forced by a rebellion. In the annals of history and the pages of fantasy alike, the theme of rebellion against unchecked power resonates deeply. The Magna Carta's creation is a prime example, a testament to the collective will of the barons of England demanding accountability from King John. This historical moment signifies a turning point where the idea that authority must be bound by laws became entrenched in the societal consciousness. It's a powerful narrative of how collective action can reshape the very foundations of governance. To adapt this to our fantasy realm, let's return to the feudalistic magocracy we just created. The people become discontented with just ruling. Lesser mages are disillusioned by the status quo. Perhaps even a few more powerful mages join in, having seen excesses of power that hurt those dear to them because they weren't magically powerful. These forces far outnumber the few mages at the top who are still happy with the pyramid scheme of magic. And they rise up in rebellion with the demand of a constitution, a set of unbreakable laws that even the most potent sorcerer cannot ignore. The rebels win, because who doesn't like a good old rebellion, and a constitution is born. It introduces checks and balances, perhaps establishing a council where non-magical representatives have a say in the creation of laws and the appointment of magical officials. And if you want more details on how a rebellion might go down in fantasy, check out my video on the topic in the information card. Now, we'll discuss all of these constitutional elements further down below, like enforcement and so on. But first, let's talk about the second way our magical pyramid scheme might be undermined. Revolution! A constitution could be established in the aftermath of a revolution. Remember the difference between rebellion and revolution. The one overthrows the present government and maybe introduces some reforms. That's rebellion. The other sweeps the old societal framework away and replaces it with a new one. That's revolution. I've done some videos about revolution, which you can, say it with me now, check out in the information cards. Anyway, our feudal society could be subject to a revolution the way the French Ancien regime was. The revolutionary coalition rises up and seethes through the streets. This isn't merely a political upheaval, but a magical renaissance, challenging the very underpinnings of arcane authority. The revolution could arise from various catalysts: a tyrannical sorcerer king overthrown, a cabal of dark wizards defeated by a coalition of rebels, or perhaps a civil war between factions of mages with differing visions for the future. In the revolution's aftermath, a new order is established, a completely changed form of government. They seek to establish a constitutional order that not only checks the potential for abuse inherent in magical governance, but also ensures that the scars of the past do not define the future. They create a completely new form of government, perhaps one where mages are still the government, but you are elected to your position. So you could blend a magocracy with a democracy and use the Constitution as the founding document of this post-revolutionary society, identifying who is qualified to stand to vote and who is enfranchised to vote. This opens up powerful storylines of forcing societal change and limiting the power of might makes right. And again, we'll talk about other constitutional issues like checks and balances a little later, but first, I want to talk about the third way in which our ruling wizards can be forced to adopt a constitution. Conquest. Due to either conquering a new territory or being conquered, the previous magocracy might be forced to the negotiating table to adopt constitutional limits to their political power. I know this seems counterintuitive, but stay with me. You could have your magocracy either as attacking or defending in this scenario, but either way, they encounter fierce resistance from the people who they are fighting, and these people are not a magocracy. Now, for this to work, you need to set it up so that neither side can leave the lands they're fighting over. Maybe the non-wizards came here as refugees and they have nothing to go back to. Or maybe the magocracy guys came here with magic, but it won't take them back and they're stranded. Whatever the case, both sides are stuck in this land and fighting over it. And the two sides turn out to be more or less equal, and they fight each other to a standstill. And in the ensuing peace talks, they hammer out a compromise which forms the basis of their constitutional magocracy. I did this in my epic fantasy series, Sangwheel Chronicles, on the shelf there behind me, in the backstory lore. My magocracy guys were religious refugees, and they landed on a peninsula where magic was used, but not nearly to the extent that the magocracy guys used it. And in the end, the two sides, the original inhabitants of the peninsula and the magocracy, arrived at a compromise. The magocracy would still rule, but the people had a voice, represented in their elected rechtsprekers, who are law enforcers. And if that sounds interesting to you, you can check it out in the links down below. There's another fantasy author who did something similar to this, not as lore, but as a plot of her book, and that is Mercedes Lackey in the Mage Storm series. And we'll talk more about that in the section on enforcement of the Constitution. Okay, so that's the 3 ways I see of a constitutional magocracy coming into being. What do you think? Have I missed any? Let me know in the comments below. And let's move on to what the Constitution needs in order to work as a check on mages. Of course, you could enforce your fantasy constitution in the same way as we enforce our constitutions. There could be a system of checks and balances to prevent any single mage or group of mages from becoming too powerful. If I borrowed from the USA Constitution, say, this might include separate branches of government, such as a legislative body of mages that create the laws, an executive body responsible for enforcing them, and a judicial branch that interprets these laws, and each of these would have their own magical jurisdiction and capabilities. Your law enforcement officials could be mages or people with special anti-magic equipment to enforce the Constitution should a mage go rogue. This allows you to tell some great cop-style stories, and perhaps lean into stories of technology versus magic, where technology represents the democratization of powerful abilities, and magic is the exclusive domain of mages. But this is fantasy world building, and your magic can go so much further. So, let's talk about Mercedes Lackey and the Mage Storm trilogy, specifically the story arc of Grand Duke Tremaine, who is sent to conquer Hardorn by the Emperor Charles. Now, like all high nobles in the empire, Tremaine is a mage, and he is currently the favorite to be named emperor after Charles, but only if he gets the conquest of Hardorn right. Unfortunately for Tremaine, the bus of the mage storms hit him, and due to these apocalyptic storms, he is trapped in Hardorn. He starts to establish order and actually govern the conquered territory, more or less out of self-defense. But as the story unfolds, his conscience, long suppressed in the cutthroat world of the empire, begins to resurface. He goes on something of a redemption arc and becomes a good ruler of the territory he controls. And in due course, he is approached by Hardorn loyalists who offer him the crown of Hardorn, rulership of the whole land, but only if he will undergo the ancient ritual of Sessin, which ties him to the land. Tremaine thinks this ritual would not be a serious matter. He agrees and ends up tied to the land in a very direct constitution, where he cannot abuse the land, because doing so would make him sick as well. So this contract with the land actively enforces the Constitution, and this is something you can use in your fantasy world. The wizard government could be forced to enter into some kind of contractual magic, enforced through blood oath or other means, and thus you have a neutral party enforcing the law. This opens up quite a few interesting storylines. You could introduce the concept of spirit versus letter of the law, where the contract only enforces the letter, and this could enable you to write around themes of abusing the law without breaking it. Or, to explore a different avenue, you could set up a situation where the contract and its magical enforcement has become outdated, forcing the country to continue to use a form of government that no longer fits their society. This opens up the theme of when is societal change necessary, and when does the framework of a bygone era become more of an anchor holding you back than a platform enabling you forward. You could tell a tale of finding a way to alter the laws, where the magic of enforcement becomes a thematic stand-in for societal norms that no longer fit the world that has come to be. You could even embrace a truly dark storyline, where the magocracy was overthrown and mages were made slaves of the state. You could then tell a story from the mages' perspective as they struggle to become people again. This would allow you to delve into themes of cyclical violence and revenge as a never-ending circle. I will say that if you go this route, be aware that you're taking on a story with a lot of baggage. And if you've enjoyed this exploration of enforcing a constitution in a magocracy, hit the thumbs up button and let's talk about your constitutional magocracy. So, when defining this strange type of government, here are the questions you need to answer. 1. How does the magocracy in its raw form work? Is it mages ruling over common people, or is everyone mages but only the strongest rule? What determines the ruler, and all of those details? 2. Why was the Constitution adopted? This question will inform how people feel about the Constitution and, in a large part, how it is enforced. And that leads us to 3. You absolutely have to understand how the Constitution is enforced, especially if your mages are personally powerful fireball throwers. Why do they obey the rules? What do you think? How would a constitutional magocracy function? What challenges and triumphs would it face? Let me know in the comments what you think. This episode was brought to you by the members of my channel, who are the mages of my government. And if you'd like to join their ranks like Dylan, Tiffany, Tony, and Katie, and get early access to my content along with a host of other cool perks, you can hit the big join button under the video. But please, don't feel pressured to support the channel financially. You can also show your support just by watching another video. Since you enjoyed this video, you might also enjoy my video on democracies in fantasy worlds. Or you can trust the algorithm with its recommendation right over there, and I will see you soon for another episode of Just in Time Worlds, where we build what we need when we need it.